Let me read a few lines from different articles which have no connection to each other, but there's still an underlying theme. So article 1 says, imagine a clock. If the hour hand starts at 10 and 4 hours pass, the clock will point to 2. But the clock arithmetic can be done with any number, not just, as in the case of real-world clocks, the number 12. Article 2 says, say you had a clock with only 11 hours, starting at 10 o'clock, and adding 2 hours, you end up at 1 o'clock. The number of hours on the clock has to be prime for the division to work the way it should. Article 3 says a finite field is like a clock with the number of hours equal to the prime. Article 3 says a finite field is like a clock with number of hours equal to the prime. If you keep counting upward, the numbers start over again. In the finite field for 7, for example, 5 plus 2 equals 0 and 5 plus 3 equals 1. These are among the many articles in Quantum magazine that are either introducing or reviewing the notion of modular arithmetic. If you take any popular science class, they'll tell you to avoid any and all jargon. So the writers at Quanta are refraining from using the phrase modular arithmetic and assuming that their readers know what it is. This means that they have to bear the burden of reintroducing this notion every new article that they need it in. Don't get me wrong, I think it's great that these popular science articles don't assume things and introduce all the prerequisites. But these articles are discussing some very difficult ideas from algebraic number theory, elliptic curves, and even the ever so prestigious Fermat's last theorem. Any mathematician will tell you that there is a massive chasm between encountering modular arithmetic from the first time and gaining any traction on the proof of Fermat's last theorem. The problem that Bob's high writing faces is how can we cross this chasm in about 2,000 words. To their credit, the authors are doing a really good job of laying the bridge, but man, this chasm is brutal. When I read these articles, I get a full-fledged review of modular arithmetic and a vague, foggy idea of the topics the titles were promising to cover. Also, I don't know, maybe an uninitiated person will get a lot out of this article's introduction, but my particular background blinds me to being a good judge of that. This is also a notion that will appear later in the video, and some of you watching this video might judge an article with a better perspective. So popular science writing can never free itself of this tension as it aims to cater at all levels, and the only prerequisite is curiosity.
Hey, editing Aditya here. I don't know why I said it so snarkily, but curiosity being the only prerequisite is actually a pretty good thing. Okay, back to the video.
In his book, The T100 World by Carl Sagan, he says that it takes 15 years of studying mathematics to even understand the introductory notions of quantum mechanics. He calls these initiation rites. Let me read to you something that he says. The job of the popularizer of science trying to get across some idea of quantum mechanics to a general audience that has not gone through these initiation rites is daunting. Indeed, there are no successful popularizations of quantum mechanics in my opinion, partly due to this reason. He says more in the rest of the paragraph, which I will leave in the description below. I have been to many academic talks at seminars and conferences, numbering in the hundreds. When I was an undergrad, I would get lost in the first quarter of the talk and flail my way through the remainder of it. These talks were chock full of jargon that tested a poor undergrad's slippery understanding. Now, I can make it through most talks, and often I lose focus not because I overclock my brain, but because of my waning interest. I would like to say that this is the case because the talks themselves have gotten better, but we both know that this isn't the case. It's partly because of the exposure to these dense talks that I've developed an academically thick skin. In contrast to the popular science stuff, the talks are so jargon heavy. But why is that the case? Pretentiousness? Maybe, but I argue that there are some practical reasons. The amount of information that needs to be conveyed in these talks is immense. Sometimes you have to communicate months of research in a span of 20 minutes. This level of information density can only be achieved by compressing large ideas into smaller terminology, which breeds jargon. In such talks, you expect the audience to have some prerequisite level of knowledge, and by using jargon and not reintroducing the terms that both of you are familiar with, you're saving yourself and the audience some time. Another reason that people give these talks is to seek out collaborations, often with people who are not directly in the field. In order to draw such people in, you might want to stick these terms on a flagpole and wave them about instead of spending precious minutes defining such terms. So you throw some words out and hope the people who understand them aren't sleeping. Even though they are different in terms of how they use jargon, these talks suffer the same fate as quant articles, where the reader follows in the introduction, but when the burden of information becomes too much to bear, new tricks are devised. The quanta author cracks open their palette of metaphors and forgoes rigor in order to paint the bigger picture. The person giving an academic talk ramps up the amount of information they spew. With each passing slide, they gradually lose everyone except the experts. When you are one of these quote-unquote experts, it can be really hard to judge how good a talk is. When I see talks in my field, I often think that they are pretty good, while when I talk to my friends who are not in the field, they said they got lost on the first slide. In many conferences, people who ask questions are the one who understood most of the talk, and they often start their questions by saying, "Oh, that was a great talk," which is either a biased or an empty compliment and does not give honest feedback to the speaker. All this jargon in a talk has the tendency to alienate people who are outside your field while laser focusing on the experts.
And that kind of sucks.
I will talk about how to not do that towards the end of the video, but I'm also a little sympathetic towards the cause. There are not that many avenues to share your research with people who will understand every tiny detail. And often, sharing these tiny details is how you get people to think about your talk, and this is how new research happens. Sometimes these experts include people who will give you a job in the future. And so reaching out to these people becomes more important than holding an audience. You might be wondering why I'm making these oranges and apples fight by comparing the written medium of quanta articles to the more visual medium of academic talks. Wouldn't YouTube videos be a better counterpart to these talks? And also, if you are comparing, then wouldn't it be better to compare academic papers to quant articles? In my opinion, these comparisons are actually worse. The sheer flexibility of YouTube videos with camera angles, movie magic, and animations is too formidable an opponent for a slide deck to face, even with a seasoned presenter at its helm. Papers are a different beast altogether. I'm being a bit cheeky when I say this, but papers are written not as communication, but as a record of results. It is more important for the math to be clear, concise, pragmatic, and original than it is for the exposition to be really good. In academia, good communication is valued but not required. Just because the media are the same, the written medium in the case of articles and papers, and the more visual medium of YouTube videos and talks, their purposes are just not the same. From my perspective, talks are doing the same communication to a well-versed audience as articles are doing to a less versed audience. They also seem to have a similarly strong arsenal in the case of having text and visuals. I have been berating articles and talks for a bit now, so let's focus on what we want. We're looking for a sweet spot here. Something that isn't targeted towards experts, not towards the general audience, but towards people who have a strong foundation in mathematics, just not in the same field that is being communicated. I like to understand this using the parlance of third places. The first place is your home, and this is the kind of space that popular science offers. It is a comfortable and welcoming environment that doesn't stray too far from the comfort zone of the reader. There might be some expenditure of energy, like chores, to understand a certain topic, but science popularization often chooses the path of least resistance. On the other hand, we have the second place, which is the workplace. And in our context, it refers to the academic circles that you belong to. There's an expectation of professionalism, like suit and tie, and there are strict rules to be followed. These rules can range from the language that we use to communicate to how we format our papers. At home, everything is welcome and simple, while at work, expertise is required. So where do you go to learn ideas that are digestible, yet in a detailed format? Where is the sweet spot where the communication happens between experts from one field to the other? A third place, like a bar, cafe, or a park, is where people with varying interests can gather to share skills or ideas or just goof around. You can make a new friend who teaches you how to crochet, while you can teach them how to play Street Fighter Third Strike. In these places, expertise is shared between experts. You learn new math that feels digestible but also rigorous. Such places assume some shared prerequisite knowledge and build on top of that. What are some examples of these places in math communication? One of the first things that comes to my mind are textbooks. They assume a certain background and then aim to present the material in a pedagogically sound manner. Textbooks often make the necessary background clear in the beginning, and if you lack that background, they will often refer you to other textbooks so that you can build it. Another option is to follow a course, in person or online, such as MIT OCW or Crash Course, where you can get exposed to new ideas in a very pedagogical way. So MIT OCW is great. It has a lot of math courses. Crash Course doesn't have a math series yet, but hey, if you want one, give me a call. One drawback I can think of is that books and courses often have a rigid structure that you might not vibe with. Both of these require long time commitments, and the primary method of learning is by doing a lot of exercises, which in math education is called productive struggle. And I'm a fan of that, but that's not always what you want. Given how much time they are asking for you, both books and courses promise to deliver a large amount of material with a very fine-grained understanding, which again might not be what you need at the moment. A more free-form means of expression are expository articles. These are articles written by experts on a given topic with an audience of other experts in mind, and these other experts are in a different field. There is no expectation to adhere to, and so the author can choose to weave between giving the big picture and crunching the yummy details. This is in contrast to a book or a course which promises to show you the ins and outs of the whole thing. My favorite collection of such articles is the Princeton Companion to Mathematics. Here you can find a wonderfully intuitive introduction to many hard areas of math, and it's just a fun feeling just rifling through the topics. So why are there not more of these expository papers? Well, the publishing incentives at universities and in journals are skewed towards original research. Having talked to many people who have published some of my favorite expository articles, I get the same sentiment. It is really hard to get these articles published. So if you spend a chunk of semester writing these articles and then busting your ass getting these published, and they don't even count towards the promotion, well, too bad. There are some journals like Combinatorial Theory that will appreciate these expository submissions, but these are too far and few between to actually make a difference. And so a lot of people just don't consider writing expository articles as a worthwhile use of their time. As an honorable mention, I want to talk about blogs by mathematicians. I think people like John Bias do a fantastic job of communicating difficult ideas in math, physics, and many other fields. This guy is insane to a generally academically minded audience. One of John Bias's projects is called N-Category Cafe, which further evokes the idea of blogs as third places. So today I want to talk about my favorite third place. The book The Great Good Place by Oldenburg popularized the idea of a third place. In this book, he says that the basic motivation, that which draws people back time and again, is fun. He also says that I'll contend that nothing contributes as much to one's sense of belonging to community as much as membership in a third place. From this, I gather that if your exposition can make people feel included, then it goes a long way in establishing a healthy community. So, what can you do? What makes a talk inclusive? I believe that the central participant of your talk should be the audience. This means you want to cater to the audience and assume that they have a certain background, certain varied backgrounds, but also they're all strong mathematicians. This is the old assume no knowledge and infinite intelligence adage. The way you want to cater to the audience is a single multitudinous entity. To add to this, my advisor once said that no one will ever complain about a talk that they fully understood. So what can you do to make your talk more understandable? Here are some things I've learned. First, pare down your talk to illustrative examples. The main meat of your talk should consist of a lot of examples. Spend some time introducing and motivating the topic, and you can mostly keep your own results stashed towards the end. Make sure that you have audience participation by asking the audience questions from time to time. This makes the talk super interactive, and keeping enough space in your talk so that the audience has the chance to ask you questions, and make sure you politely answer them. Spend some time thinking about a consistent theme for your slides and also making your slides look good, as this helps you really capture the audience attention from slide 1. Realize that there's a difference between talks and presentations differentiated by the content versus the delivery. Once you know which suits you best, then you can play to your strengths. Another, probably one of the most important things, is to take honest feedback from the people who attended your exposition or people who have read your exposition, and incorporate this honest feedback into later versions of your talk. I do this by making a cool form. Math can often be a lonely endeavor, and it's unfair to squander these precious moments of social interaction that we get. I will stop rambling about talks, but if you want to hear more things that I've learned, I can maybe compile them into a future video. Let me know in the comments if you want this. So I'll close this with a little homework for you. What are some other third places in science communication that you can think of? Here are some pointers to get you started. Such communication should assume reasonable expertise. So maybe you can assume it at, say, an advanced undergrad level. All of the prerequisites that you have should be stated front and center so that the reader does not spend a significant amount of time before even beginning. Then you should know the purpose of your talk. What this means is that you should realize, are you communicating something intuitively? Do you want to reach an audience with a higher floor of understanding? Or are you just communicating math news to a slightly well-versed audience? Build on the background you assumed. This means that you should not be reintroducing topics that you and also your reader are familiar with. This is just wasting both of your time. You can at best reintroduce or recall some notions. And finally, you should use your time well. Some things such as talks have a limited length of time that you can spend in, versus expository documents which allow you to use time luxuriously. You can spend this time doing a lot of things, like investigating examples, working out details, providing history or context. A third place isn't something you clock out of, but it's someplace you stay because it is fun. I would love to hear what unconventional ideas you have, and maybe I'll see you later in a third place maybe.